Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Prabhupada Shratta Shishiman His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada Ki Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Alrighty. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 3, Texts 24 and... let me see here. 25 and 26. Okay. So the word for word. So, tataha, katipayahi, ma shahi, vrishni, bhoja, andhaka, adayaha, yayuhu, prabhasham, samhrishtaha, rathai, deva, vimohitaha, tata katipayarmasar, tata katipayarmasar, Vrishni Bojan Dakakadayaha Yayu Prabhasam Samhrishta Vater Deva Vimohitaha Tata Katipayar Masar Vrishni Bojan Dakakadayaha Yayu Prabhasham Samhrishta Rater Deva Vimohitaha Tata Katipayar Masar Vrishni Bojanda Kadayaha Yayu Prabhasham Samhrishta Rater Deva Vimohitaha Master
कतिपयुर्मासय वृष्णि भोजान दिखादया प्रभासं संविष्टा हयदेव विमोहिताः कतिपयुर्मासय वृष्णि भोजान दिखादया प्रभासं संविष्टा हयदेव विमोहिताः
Mataji's? Okay. So word for word. Tata. Thereafter. Katipayai. A few. Ma Shahi. Months passing. Vrishni. The descendants of Vrishni. Bhoja. The descendants of Bhoja. Andaka Adayaha. And others like the sons of Andaka. Yayuhu went. Prabhasam, place of pilgrimage named Prabhas. Samhrishta, with great pleasure. Ratahi, on their chariots. Deva, by Krishna. Vimohita, bewildered. Okay, translation, purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. A few months passed, and then, bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who were incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhas, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave but remained in Dwarka. In text 26. So, Tatrist Stanva Pritmin Devam Rishim Chaiva Tarambasa Tarpayit Swaha Viprebyo Gavo Bahu Gana Daduhu. After arriving there, all of them took bath, and with the water of this place of pilgrimage, they offered their respects to the forefathers, demigods, and great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the brahmanas in royal charity. Amongst the devotees of the Lord, there are several divisions, mainly Nityasiddhas and Sadhanasiddhas. The Nityasiddhas devotees never fall down to the region of the material atmosphere, even though they sometimes come onto the material plane to execute the mission of the Lord. The Sadhanasiddha devotees are chosen from the conditioned souls. Out of the sadhana devotees, there are mixed and pure devotees. The mixed devotees are sometimes enthusiastic about fruitive activities and are habituated to philosophical speculation. The pure devotees are free from all of these mixtures and are completely absorbed in the service of the Lord, regardless of how and where they are situated. Pure devotees of the Lord are not enthusiastic to put aside their service to the Lord in order to go visit holy places of pilgrimage. A great devotee of the Lord in modern times, Sri Narottam Das Thakur, has sung like this: to visit holy places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord in any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. For pure devotees of the Lord who are completely satisfied with the transcendental loving service of the Lord, there is hardly any necessity to visit the various places of pilgrimage. But those who are not so advanced have the prescribed duties of visiting pilgrimage sites and regularly performing the rituals. The part of the princely order of the Yadu dynasty who went to Prabhas performed all duties to be done in a place of pilgrimage and offered their pious actions to their forefathers and others. As a rule, every human being is indebted to God, the demigods, great sages, other living entities, people in general, forefathers, etc., for various contributions received from them. Thus, everyone is obliged to repay the debt of gratitude. The Yadus who went to Prabhas pilgrimage site performed their duties by distributing land, gold, and well-nourished cows and royal charity, as described in the following verse. Om Jnana Tamanandasya Gananjanjana Shalakaya Chakshurununitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dedati Swapanantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shukta Parakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Sha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raganavtam Mitam Tam Shajivam Savadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishnapadan Sahagana Lalitam Shri Vishakam Mitam Sha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhakti Vikas Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimante Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nivishesha Sunivari Paskatar Starine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Vandeya Prasada Virata Sangajya Kara Pratana Amya Siddhanta Samvinam. So these texts again. So Tathakati Payar Maser Rishni Bojanda Kayadayaha Yayu Prabhasam Samshrishta Rater Deva Vimohitaha. A few months passed, and then bewildered by Krishna, all the descendants of Vrishni, Bhoja, and Andaka, who are incarnations of demigods, went to Prabhas, while those who were eternal devotees of the Lord did not leave, but remained in Dwarka. Tatrasnava Pratindevan Rishim Shaiva Tarambasa Sarpayatva Tata Viprebhyo Gava Bahu Guna Datuhu. After arriving there, all of them took bath, and with the water of this place, a pilgrimage, they offered their respects to the forefathers, demigods, and great sages, and thus satisfied them. They gave cows to the brahmanas in royal charity. So, we're almost at the conclusion of this chapter, and this is more or less like giving the conclusion of Krishna's pastimes also. And in the next chapter, I believe there'll be some discussion about that. So, so these two verses here, Uddhava is giving his take on the disappearance of Krishna and what was going on there. So text 25 doesn't have a purport, but Prabhupada makes statements within the text 26, giving some indication of the previous purport. And also, too, if you look at text 25, there's a couple things there, but it's not like directly like mentioned in the Sanskrit that the point about that that those who went to Prabhas were demigods, and then those that were remained in Dwarka were eternal devotees of the Sanskrit in and of itself. The other Vaishnavacharyas make that point in the 11th canto, that those distinctions were made, and then they were taken outside of Dwarka so that the demigods could go back to their respective post. But not everybody was a demigod, because Krishna and Balaram were also there at Prabhas and engaged in that fight. So anyways, I'll speak a little bit about that today. So, but one important aspect, so this text in 25 and also in the purport in 26, a distinction is being made that there are different categories of devotees and different grades of devotees. Prabhupada, in one place, said that when one becomes perfect, sadhana siddha, nitya siddha, kripa siddha, it doesn't really matter how one became perfect in the end, because one is perfect, one is with Krishna. If you're drowning in the ocean and then you get out, and it's, or what, I mean, he said that in a different perspective, but anyways, without getting into that. So there's so from that perspective, it's just like, sometimes maybe devotees, they question if such and such acharya, they nitya siddha or sadhana siddha. Well, that's not really so much important, that they're perfect now. But the Shastras do make a distinction between that, for just so we understand the way that the Lord is interacting with his devotees and things like that, and also to encourage us. But anyways, we also see that nitya siddha, sometimes they come down. That's a whole discussion. But it's described. This is Bhakti Vikas Maharaj explained this to me one time. But it's described in one place that I believe it's with Narada Muni, that he's a sadhana siddha. But then I was asking for more clarification on that, and pretty much Bhakti Vikas Maharaj explained that Narada Muni is a nitya siddha, but then he comes down and it shows the role as a sadhana siddha. So it's like they're eternally perfect, but then some of them come down in the material world and display the pastime of not being perfect and then becoming perfect again. It's pretty inconceivable. But those are theirs, and those are teachings to show us and encourage us on the path of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada makes a point in this purport here, also breaking down the divisions of sadhana siddhas, or just sadhana devotees, that there are devotees that are pure devotees and devotees that are mixed. And that can also be broken down. Pure devotee may not be someone that is seeing Krishna at every single moment in the more wide term of pure devotee, but it may be someone that's on the path of pure devotional service, who has been initiated into the chain of pure teachers, pure acharyas, who are giving pure Krishna consciousness, versus there may be mixed devotion, which someone may be practicing bhakti, but at the same time being enthusiastic, as Prabhupada says here, for fruitive activities and philosophical speculation. And I'll also discuss more about that, because those can also overlap. One can be on the path of pure devotional service, but then be enthusiastic about activities which are not conducive to pure devotional service. So one point here in the previous text is that that the demigods, that they the associates of Krishna in Dwarka, who were demigods, they were taken to Prabhas, and as we all know, without getting so much into the whole Prabhas Leela, is that there was a curse, and I think that was made yesterday, actually. That was spoken up yesterday by Rishi Kumar, but there was a curse. And pretty much, they went and did something pretty crazy. As you actually think about it, it's really wild that they went up to like so many great rishis and sages and dressed up one of the warriors as a woman, and then whatever, put some, I don't know exactly. You remember what they put inside to like make them look pregnant? A ball or something. So, anyways, it's really ridiculous. And one reason that's ridiculous, actually, I was thinking about that more, is because most of those associates were there with that whole pastime with Krimriga. And that, what was taught, one of those points that were taught with that pastime was just like how careful you have to be with dealing with brahmanas. Because Nriga's whole thing was that he didn't even do anything on purpose. It wasn't even his fault. Like a cow went into another pasture, and then it came back, and then he gave it as a donation. And then those two brahmanas, by the arrangement of the Lord, they were fried out, and they were not willing to to be they were not willing to be peaceful at that time. They were really agitated, and so he had to suffer for that. And so Krishna, I think he makes that point directly, that how careful we have to be in dealing with brahmanas and not stealing their property and things like that, or taking from them. So that was just an accident. What to speak of going directly and just like straight up just like lying to like brahmanas and just like messing with them, And there's so many different intricacies that could be seen with that. And then also too, there's, It generally, I don't know if they did, but anyways, I don't want to get all into that. But it was like ridiculous that they went and did such a thing. Of course, that was the arrangement of the Lord, and the Brahmanas and Narada Muni, they also understood that. And so and this is how Krishna wants to wind up his pastimes. And there's so much that can be said about that, and maybe I'll read a little bit about that. But the thing is that it's important to know that the Vrishnis and all the Lord's associates in Dwarkas, whether they're the demigods or the Nityasiddha devotees, they're all great devotees actually. Even the ones that went back to the demigod positions. And it's also important to note, it's a little detailed, but it's one of the acharyas mentioned, I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, that generally when demigods, like if they become perfect in Krishna consciousness, they have to like remain like in their post generally before they can go back to Godhead. They don't go back immediately. And we see that in Krishna's Leela actually, that a lot of the demigods that will like achieve Krishna's darshan or mercy, they went back to their post. Some acharya makes a point like that. So anyways, those kind of things are given there. And so anyways, one important point to know is that they're not ordinary people. And so Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur Jiva Goswami makes the point in his commentary on the 11th canto. I'll just read a little bit from that. So he says, so it should not be thought that the Yadus were a burden because of their being a dharmic. And then he quotes 11:1-8, and I'll just read the English. So how could the Brahmanas curse the Vrishnis, who were always respectful to the Brahmanas, who were charitable, who were inclined to serve seniors, and whose minds were always absorbed in Krishna? And we see a similar mentality in text 26, that they went to Prabhas, and then they did all these pious activities. They gave Brahmanas charity and all these different things. So it's like, it's just like a little bit ago they did that whole thing with the joking, and then now they're doing that. So anyways, he's just making the point they're not a dharmic. Then continuing, so this is from Canto 10, Chapter 90, Text 46. So the Vrishnis were so absorbed in Krishna that they forgot their own bodies while sleeping, sitting, walking, conversing, playing, bathing, and so on. And I'll just read this as just a side comment. But the burden of the earth was not increased by their profuse numbers, since there were also unlimited mountains and oceans that the earth supported. So the point is that the Vrishnis, Krishna's associates, they were great devotees, and that's being substantiated. They were so absorbed in Krishna, they forgot, they forgot their own bodies while sleeping and things like that. So they weren't just like, a little bit Krishna conscious or whatever. They were great devotees. And that point is also mentioned too in the Bhagavatam in relation to the cowherd boys, but we can understand that with also with just Krishna's associates in general. But this Krita Punya Punjaha. So I think it's Sukadeva Goswami that's making this point. But I'll just read one part of it. So he says, the cowherd boys, having accumulated the results of pious activities for many lives, were able to associate in this way. So they're hanging out and playing with Krishna. We're able to hang out, I lost it. So we're able to associate in this way with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can one explain their great fortune? So after many pious lives, one gets this is of course devotional service, but one gets the opportunity to associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So it's the same thing we can understand with the Yadu dynasty and Mathura. Anybody who gets a chance to associate with Krishna directly, they did something great in their previous life, or they're doing something good right now. It's not an ordinary thing. There's Krishna's causes mercy and things like that, and he kind of descends and people run into him. But to be like directly living in Krishna's city and associating with them and seeing them regularly, it's not like an ordinary thing. So the Yadu dynasty they're great devotees, and that should be understood. That's an important point. So just some other things. So the acharyas, they also make different points about the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty. That there's different lessons that that to be learned from that. But one important point, I'll just kind of summarize it without reading it. But one important point that the disappearance of the Yadu dynasty is to teach us that material world is temporary, and because more or less, they had like one of the best positions in the material world, actually, because they were directly associating with Krishna. They were living with Krishna. And I don't know if it's Jiva Goswami or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, but pretty much they make the point that, Krishna, he's, Swayam Bhagavan, Purnam, complete, all opulences are with them, fame, beauty, wealth, like that. They're serving him and associating with them, so similarly they have access to all those things, unlimited wealth. So it's like, they had a super opulent position. And generally in the material world, people want to get into an opulent position. But Krishna showed by that, by the example of his dynasty, that all can be lost in a minute. Because it was, they did that curse happened, but then, it's all just within just a short span of time, everything was finished. They lost their lives and lost their kingdom and everything just gone. So life can be like that sometimes in a second, and you can see that even in the material sphere, people, there's been times in history, but like in American history, the Great Depression, it was just like within just like a span of a couple hours, people lost, people lost so much money and people were completely broke and like that, and just like, just the stock market completely crashed. And there's been instances of that in history where just like the money just like completely fails, just overnight, and then people they lose everything. Or whatever, and you don't even have to just lose in the stock market, but then there's people that, they lose their job overnight or whatever, or they start a business and then it just like things just crash and then people are stealing money and they go bankrupt. There's like, anyways, there's like cases of that. There's just people, getting money stolen from them or whatever. So there's instances of that in history, and so that's there to teach us that in Krishna consciousness that things may change greatly, and we don't have an eternal situation within the material world. So that's there. We can learn from that, and that can show us that. And so Krishna wanted to teach that. And there's other things that Krishna wanted to teach also. But that's one point there. There's so many different points. So another point is that Prabhupada makes in this particular purport is that Nityasiddha devotees. And so those are devotees that they don't come down in the material world with the propensity to enjoy. Because there's devotees that come down, that they're with Krishna, and they come to the material world to, out of envy of Krishna, to enjoy enjoy separately from Krishna. But Nityasiddha devotees don't come down in the material world with that defect in mind, to enjoy separately. They come down specifically to engage in Krishna's pastimes, or they come down to facilitate Krishna's desire by spreading Krishna consciousness or preaching Krishna consciousness or something like that, just to attract conditioned souls back to the spiritual world. And like that. And then, like some of the residents of Vrindavan or like great acharyas like that come down. So, and so in this particular purport, Srila Prabhupada, he makes the distinction between Nityasiddha, explaining Nityasiddha, Sadhana Siddhas, and then divisions of sadhana, of devotees, sadhana bhaktas. And within that, he makes the point of mixed and pure devotees. And so that's important. And then also he talks about tirthas, which we'll talk about a little bit at the end. So that's really important for us to understand the distinction between pure devotional service and mixed devotional service of, Krishna consciousness. Because practicing Krishna consciousness, we're aspiring to execute pure devotional service. We don't chant prayers, and if we look at the prayers that we're reading, they're not saying, I'm praying to, get the mercy of the spiritual master so I can get a big position in the material world or something, or I'm, whatever. We don't chant slokas that, Krishna, you've come down in this material world, please deliver me from the cycle of birth and death and give me $1 million also while we're at it. That's not the mood in praying like that. And so it's important for us to understand and hear what pure devotional service is, because we can get caught in certain misconceptions of thinking things that are Krishna conscious or not Krishna conscious, or thinking things that are not Krishna conscious are Krishna conscious, are conscious. Because we can just see, even without analyzing so much just within ISKCON or whatever, but within all religions, there's understood within those that there's some that are following more seriously than others. There's different grades of that. But we should understand that it's not just some automatic process in Krishna consciousness, that just because, I join and then, I follow this and follow that I'm automatically a pure devotee just because, I fall into a certain parameters, or I was initiated by a certain guru, so therefore I'm automatically a pure devotee. Initiation is a beginning. It's an opportunity to execute pure Krishna consciousness, but it's not just some automatic thing. And so we have to do our work in Krishna consciousness, and we have to follow the process, and we have to hear regularly of the pitfalls of Krishna consciousness or the obstacles on the path of pure devotional service. And that's important, and because that tendency is always there within the material world to kind of hover back into the materialistic sphere of things, and like that. So I just wanted to read something here. This is from Srila Prabhupada's purport. I just got to pull it up. Okay. So this is, you don't have to pull this up, but this is from the 6th canto, 9th chapter. So Prabhupada in this purport kind of makes a similar distinction like how he does in this purport about different kinds of devotees. So just read a little bit from that. So there are two kinds of devotees, known as Sakama and Akama. Pure devotees are Akama, whereas devotees in the upper planetary systems, such as the demigods, are called Sakama because they still want to enjoy material opulence. Because of their pious activities, the Sakama devotees are promoted to the higher planetary systems, but at heart they still desire to lord it over the material resources. The Sakama devotees are sometimes disturbed by the demons and Rakshasas, but the Lord is so kind that he always saves them by appearing as an incarnation. The Lord's incarnations are so powerful that Lord Vamana covered the entire universe with 2 steps and therefore had no place for his 3rd step. Therefore, the Lord is called Trivikram because he showed his strength by delivering the entire universe in 3 steps. So the difference between the Sakama and Akama devotees is that when the Sakama devotees, like the demigods, fall into difficulty, they approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead for relief, whereas the Akama devotees, even in the greatest danger, never disturb the Lord for material benefits. Even if an Akama devotee is suffering, he thinks that this is due to his past and pious activities and agrees to suffer the consequences. He never disturbs the Lord. Sakama devotees immediately pray to the Lord as soon as they are in difficulty, but they are regarded as pious because they consider themselves fully dependent on the Lord's mercy. So just a couple comments about that and just giving kind of more perspective into pure devotion and mixed devotion. So we may be somewhere in between that. We may be executing Krishna consciousness, we come into some difficulty, and then we ask Krishna to help or whatever like that, or we need something and we approach Krishna or pray to Krishna or something like that. So that's definitely good, that's pious, but the point is that that's not the highest exhibition of Krishna consciousness, to pray to Krishna when we need something or we're in some difficulty, to pray to Krishna to relieve that burden. Prabhupada tells a funny story about an old woman in India who's traveling, and in India they know the science of putting these different bundles on one's head, and so they can kind of travel and they can carry a lot of things in that way. So one lady, she was walking and then she fell, and then that whole bundle fell off her head, and there was no way she was going to put it back on her head. It's just like this huge thing. He helped to put it on. So it fell off, and then she was crying. And then I think it's just like Krishna came or something like that. And then he was like, oh, what's the problem? And then she's crying. I'm this huge thing fell off of my head and I don't know what I'm going to do. I need it to go back on. Can you put it back on? So then it's like a joke, and then then Krishna helps her put the burden back on her head, and she's so grateful for that. But the thing is that Krishna could have given her pure devotional service, given her liberation, but she just wanted this burden back on her head, and she was lamenting about that. So the thing is that that's kind of the situation with the demigods, or our situation in the material world, for always desiring a material situation, because it's we're suffering or whatever, we want a lot of money, so Krishna, please give me all this money, or whatever. And then we get $1 billion.
to the position, which is the highest platform, and that's what Prabhupada's making the point here, is that we have to understand that the goal is actually not to pray for Krishna for material things, and that we chant this every day. What is it? Nadanam najanam sunarim kavitam va jagadisha kame mama janmani janmani ishware bhavatad bhakti ahaitaki tvai. That praying, like Lord Chaitanya is showing us how to pray. Like, I don't want money, I don't want wealth, I don't want followers, I don't want nothing. I just want your service, devotional service, birth after birth. So that's actually the perfection of Krishna consciousness. So we should aspire for that. We should understand that that's actually what the goal is. We shouldn't think that the goal is something else, that the goal is to be comfortable in the material world and practice Krishna consciousness. We shouldn't take that as the goal. We may be conditioned that we need a comfortable position to practice Krishna consciousness, and that's okay. Varna ashram is there to engage different people accordingly, because brahmanas need less material facility and enjoyment than like a Sudra or something like that. And that's fine, and that's okay. There's they aren't condemned. Anybody can go back home, back to Godhead. But it's just, and Krishna makes that point in the Bhagavad Gita, actually, in many places. I don't know the Sanskrit, but he makes the point that it's better to do your duty than to do someone else's duty perfectly. So, and Krishna makes that point. That's discussed, that there's different varnas and different ashrams. They have different qualities. So, wherever you're at, like, be there, be situated, be happy, practice Krishna consciousness, and go back home, back to Godhead. So it's understood, but we should know what the goal is actually. And we should know what the goal is, and we should actually know where we are too. Because we may think that the goal is right here, and I'm right here. But in reality, we may be over here. We may not be as close as we actually think we are. So we need the help of the guru and the sadhus to tell us that actually, like, you think you're a 9, but you're really a 3, and you're trying to get to 100. You think that the goal is 10, but really it's 100, and just like making it very clear what Krishna consciousness actually is. It's super important to understand what Krishna consciousness is, what is pure devotional service, what is mixed devotional service. Because we can sit here all day and we can talk about, so many things. We can talk about Gopi Leela, we can talk about Krishna Leela. But if we have basic misunderstandings of what pure devotional service is, but then we're speaking so much about like Krishna and this and that, which is good. But if we're thinking that, for instance, like if we're thinking that to enjoy on the central platform is spiritual, like to go and watch a movie, whatever, some, I don't know what movies out there, like Star Wars or something, they seem to still be making that. We go and we think that watching Star Wars is a spiritual activity. It's just the same as like studying Srimad Bhagavatam, then there's a problem. And if we're hearing Krishna Leela, but then not discussing those things, then we won't become purely Krishna conscious. So Prabhupada is making that point. And within Srila Prabhupada's books, if we read them, and we are reading them regularly, we see that Srila Prabhupada makes that point very clear of explaining what pure devotional service actually is. And Srila Rupa Goswami opens up his Nectar Devotion on that principle, that explaining that pure devotional service is free from this jnana karma, like that, and avritam. It's pure. He's making that distinction. Okay, this karma is this, jnana is this. Devotional service is free from that. So he makes that very clear up in the beginning. It's super important because this is we have to have the proper understanding, and otherwise, if we don't have the proper understanding, or if we take that that this mixed devotional service is the same or whatever, it doesn't really matter if we execute mixed Krishna consciousness or whatever misconceptions we have, but we don't really think that's important, then what's the whole point of accepting a guru, of the sadhu and shastra, etc.? What's the point of all that if we can have material attachments and whatever, practice mixed devotional service, have all the anarthas, and be 30% Krishna conscious? There's different statements that devotees say we just have to be 70% free or something like that. But the thing is that it's not that we come to a point in Krishna consciousness where we're practicing and we think that, okay, like now it's okay, like I can maintain like these material desires I have, and this is my favorite whatever TV show, and I can watch this, and this is my favorite band, and I can hear this, and like I've reached a certain level of Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada says 70%, I'm there, I'm at 70%, and like, so like, I'm just gonna like, I can go back, I can go back home back to Godhead. So, because there's a misconception, and it's important, and it's there kind of like within a lot of religions, where individuals think that just by like being within that religion, or being within that institution, or being within that church, that it's like automatic guarantee that like I'm going back to the kingdom of God. So there's all the scriptures make a point that one who is following, one who is practicing, they have to do so properly, that there's rules and regulations to be followed. So I just want to read a point, a paragraph in the 3rd canto, 20th chapter. So there's a sentence here which is like a motto to live by. It's one of the top favorite sentences in Srila Prabhupada's purport. So I'll read the purport. It's a short one. So spiritual realization cannot be attained by materialistic persons. For those who are addicted to sense enjoyment, spiritual realization is not possible. In Bhagavad Gita, it is stated that those who are too attached to seeking material possessions and material enjoyment cannot reach yoga samadhi, absorption in Krishna consciousness. And then this is the main point here. Propaganda that one can enjoy this life materially and at the same time spiritually advance is simply bogus. So I'll repeat that one. Propaganda that one can enjoy this material life and at the same time spiritually advance is simply bogus. So that's super important, actually, because if we get caught into the misconception that you enjoy your life, and then at the same time you practice Krishna consciousness, you have fun or whatever. There's so many. I'm not going to get into all the details, but you practice Krishna consciousness and then you enjoy. You go do this and do that. You go. These things are there. Pure devotional service is there, and that Prabhupada taught that. But at the same time, be realistic. Go out and have a ball, have fun. As according to Srila Prabhupada here, that is simply bogus. And that's because they're to enjoy on the material platform and to enjoy the material senses, devoid of Krishna consciousness, because there is sense enjoyment within Krishna consciousness, but that's within Krishna's service. It's just like, for example, we say don't listen to nonsense music, but then we listen to kirtan. Don't eat, whatever is cooked outside, and we take Krishna prasadam. So the negation is there, but then the positive alternative is also there. And when one is engaged in the positive process of Krishna consciousness, then naturally one loses the inclination for all these other things. Because our philosophy isn't just negation. It's accepting Krishna consciousness. And then from that, there's so much activity and so much variety within that. Just like we had a feast yesterday. It wasn't, just like we cooked some plain oatmeal or something, or some porridge, and was like, all right, like Hare Krishna feast. Whatever, there's so many different varieties. There's so many different food preparations. And then even within kirtan too, there's like different moods and of that of performing, and different devotees that chant, and then even devotees that give classes. There's so much variety within Krishna consciousness. So there's enjoyment within Krishna consciousness, but the thing is that the enjoyment is there for one who is a servant and has that mentality. Not that one is just trying to enjoy in Krishna consciousness, but one is trying to serve. And then by having the proper attitude, naturally enjoyment and happiness is found there. But happiness isn't found in just trying to put oneself first. We have to be a servant first. So Srila Prabhupada is so that's an important point to understand and to keep to heart, that this, trying to enjoy materially and then trying to make spiritual advancement. So I'll just finish the rest of this purport. The principles of renunciation are 4: to avoid illicit sex life, to avoid meat eating, to avoid intoxication, and to avoid gambling. These 4 principles are called tapasya, or austerity. To absorb the mind in the supreme and Krishna consciousness is the process of spiritual realization. And so that's why those regulations are given. But then we see that sometimes too, that people, they claim that, and that's there, are drugs spiritual? Then the people take drugs and they have, a spiritual realization of something like that. But generally what ends up happening is that, people, they take drugs and have spiritual realizations, but then they become addicted to intoxication. And then they're drugs to have spiritual realization, but that's not spiritual. You're just dependent on drugs. You have a drug addiction. That's not spiritual. If you're dependent upon material things
for a spiritual situation, then that is, especially drugs, that isn't spiritual. We may just because we're in this material world, I mean, we need to eat and we need different material arrangements like that. So Shastra explains that, and that is made. But to be, just eating psychedelic mushrooms or taking LSD regularly, and then that's, aiding my Krishna consciousness, that is nonsense. And these things go on. I'm not just saying that. So anyways, just so the point is, so we have to hear from the right source in order to understand what Krishna consciousness is. And so I'll quote here. So this is a famous verse, and I'm quoting it from the Chaitanya Charitamrita because the translation is a little bit different. So, Yane prayasam urupasana manta eva jivanti sa mukaritam bhavadi avartam stani stita shuti gatham tanuvan manobir yas prayasho jita jito phyasi trai trilokyam. So the translation is, Ramananda Roy continued, Lord Brahma said, my dear Lord, those devotees who have thrown away the impersonal conception of the absolute truth and have therefore abandoned discussing empiric philosophical truths should hear from self-realized devotees about your holy name, form, pastimes, and qualities. They should completely follow the principles of devotional service and remain free from illicit sex, gambling, intoxication, and animal slaughter. Surrounding themselves full with body, words, and mind, they can live in any ashram or social status. Indeed, you are conquered by such persons, although you are always unconquerable. So this is a really important verse in our Sampradaya. So this verse, Lord Chaitanya began to accept what Ramananda Roy was saying in that whole discussion in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So you can eventually read that one day in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, or you can read it in Teaching of Lord Chaitanya. So at this point he began to accept. And so one of the points in here is about hearing from the self-realized souls. And so I didn't discuss so much about mixed devotional service also. At least I spoke mainly about like sense gratification. But there also could be the subtle aspect of it, which is being made here about impersonal conception or whatever, or just empiric philosophical truths. So that can also be a contamination in Krishna consciousness, surprisingly, impersonal conceptions. And that's there actually, I think it's Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes the point, and this Dhammam Dushkritina Muda verse. So he says that Maya Pritagyana can also refer to one who has studied Shastra, and they accept Vishnu as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but they think that Ram and Krishna, that they're just humans, and they have assumed that form. And they're not like the sunam bonum. So he says that their knowledge is stolen by illusion. And then, what is this? I can't remember the verse, but no. The verse is that like people, pretty much they think that I have, no, not that one. No. Yeah, Avijanti Mam Muda. They think that, I've assumed this form as a human. So he quoted that verse in reference to that. So the point is that there's always that Maya is always going at us, whether it's grossly, subtly, intellectually, or whatever. So we always have to be locked in to hearing from the parampara regularly, not sleeping. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur makes that point. And we can see, we come to Krishna consciousness sometimes, we may have different conceptions and ideas, but then we speak to devotees, and then they illuminate, and then they shed light upon that we were thinking, that the absolute truth is just like some energy or something, but then they explain that energy is there, it's subservient, but then the supreme absolute truth is a person, and is a transcendental person. Just because like speaking to somebody yesterday, and a couple of days ago, but somebody I met some years ago called me up, and they were asking different questions. They were saying, saying, Krishna, Ram reincarnated at Krishna and this and that, and then but it's just it's just misconception. It's not that Ram reincarnated with Krishna, and then therefore, because he shot Bali with the arrow, then he was shot. I mean, this is atheistic as misconceptions. So just trying to explain to him, and it's like a simple point, but people may miss it. that Krishna it's Satchidananda, that he has a spiritual body, it's not a material body. It's not that Krishna is reincarnating or whatever. He's subject to his past karmas, like that. Janma karma chinmay divyam. These points are there in the Shastra. And one thing also too is, these points are there about Krishna's, the nature of Krishna and the devotional service. We should learn these verses, but then also too, we shouldn't just learn them just to learn them, to repeat them in class or just in conversation. That's there, but then we should actually take those verses to heart and actually be convinced by them. Because we can, that janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tvakvadehan punarjanma naiti mameti sorjuna. So Krishna's saying, he's transcendental, his birth activities like that. And he's also explaining that. So one who knows that truth, he doesn't have to come back to the material world. So that first part of that verse is there, but then we can also reflect upon that verse in our own lives and think, well, we should be convinced by that actually, by what we're reading and understanding, and convince ourselves and be convinced about Krishna consciousness, about the process of Krishna consciousness, and about what the acharyas are saying to us. Because if the thing is that if we have that if we're convinced and we're fired up about it and we're hearing from the right source, then that will protect us, if we're following everything, from being sidetracked into all these kind of other things which may or may not be Krishna conscious, and also save us from maybe even going to the heavenly planets and going there and playing that whole game. So we have to hear from the right source, and that's what this verse is recommending. We have to hear from Guru, we have to hear from Sadhu, we have to hear from Shastra. We have to hear from them all. And specifically and this is important to note also, having a good understanding of Shastra doesn't mean you can't fall into Maya. And that is also there, that is taught with, and shown the example with Arjuna actually. He was very Shastric, and it's mentioned in the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, he was giving so many arguments based on Shastra about why he didn't want to fight. But then he said, well, if I fight, this happens, and this isn't good, and this, and then all these things. He was giving Shastric reason not to fight. But then in the second chapter, in the beginning, he pretty much says, I'm confused. I'm bewildered. And so we can also learn from that. And then she approaches a spiritual master. So we may have knowledge of Shastra and know so many different things, but then we can still get bewildered. So we have to have the spiritual master to help us. We have to have the devotees to help us, to guide our intelligence. So that's important there. So hearing from the right source. So just to go on to another point of this purport here. Okay. So another point that Prabhupada makes in this purport, which is important, he talks about tirthas, going on pilgrimage. And he makes an interesting point actually. So in general, the general thing is good to go to tirthas, even though at one point he makes in here about how it can be an obstacle. And I'll discuss a little bit about that. So anyways, maybe I'll discuss a little bit about how going to tirthas, holy sites, can be good. So generally going to holy sites is good. It's the Dham. Krishna performed his pastimes there. They're holy lands. They're sanctified. Anybody that's gone to India and gone to Vrindavan, Mayapur, or things like that, you feel more Krishna consciousness. It's easier to chant rounds. You can feel Krishna. You can see and feel Krishna's mercy more directly. It's perceivable. It's more easy, especially if we're sincere in our practice and following. We may pray or whatever. If some special thing happened, everybody has a special situation or where they really felt Krishna's mercy in the Dham or something like that. It's an experience to go and to be there, or just reading, and it's wow. And then you're there, you're reading Kaliya's pastimes, and then you go right down from Krishna Balaram, and then it's that tree that Krishna was standing on and jumping into the ghat, and the Yamuna's right there. So it's literally what you're reading is right there. It's it's you're in Vrindavan. It's not like you read the pastimes and you look around, you look outside, and then it's just there's so many the sights of Atlanta. People will run. You got the car pop 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 pop, and popping, making noise, and then the same guy walking down the street every single day, talking to himself, and then whatever, go to the airport, and then just no time, or just people are nasty or whatever. It's and then you it's like that, but it's Krishna literally was right here. He was like walking over there and doing that. And then like Rupa Goswami, they were over there. Sanatana Goswami was over there. Srila Prabhupada stayed over there. But it's like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was here. It's like, it was like right there. It's like that. But so it's good in that sense. And one of the main aspects of holy places though is that generally in holy places, great devotees are there. So you go to a holy place and, you do these different rituals and see these different things and you hear, but you hear from sadhus and then they explain and, Krishna's pastimes. And then, of course, the most merciful sadhus, and that's mentioned, I think that's 11, I won't remember, maybe 11:24:24. But that point is made that the sadhu, paraphrase, but he cuts our attachments, just like a knife just rips them out. So the most merciful sadhu will help us to eradicate our anarthas, those things that are holding us back, so that we can see the Dham and perfectly, and we can see the Dham perfectly, we can understand Krishna perfectly, and then we can serve the Dhamvasis and the Dham perfectly and rightly. Because even going to the Dham, there may be misconceptions there. So we have to hear. The main thing is hearing. So one aspect at this is the Prabhupada's making the point here that just before getting onto that, so places of pilgrimage are there, but then you also have the moving tirthas, which is devotees, and then that is there in the, so this is in the Bhagavatam, you all knows this verse, but Bhagavad Vida Bhagavastams Tirtha Buddha Swayam Vibho Tirtha Kurvanti Tirthani Swantastena Gadabrata. So the translation is, my Lord, devotees like your good self are verily holy places personified. Because you carry the personality of Godhead within your heart, you turn all places into places of pilgrimage. And so we see that. I mean, we all like experience that also. That, like New York City, New York is completely materialistic. But Srila Prabhupada was there. So it's like, yeah, let's go to New York. Let's go to where Srila Prabhupada was. And then Prabhupada walked here. And then Prabhupada was, he had his matchless gifts here. And then he went there. And then this, it's like you go and then you go on pilgrimage in New York. What's there to go on pilgrimage in New York? Most people go and then whatever. They go to Rockefeller Center, and then to see where the Twin Towers were, and then maybe Times Square, and then, go to an opera, and then what else? Central Park. And anyways, when I was young, I went to all these places, and this was like the New York Tirtha. So it's so, and anyways, that is a tirtha, but it is a pilgrimage for crows, as the Bhagavatam makes the point. And the thing is that there's no there's no spiritual substance to that. I mean, they're just big, big buildings, and it's just materialistic living going on. But these places that Prabhupada performed his pastimes, he spoke Srimad Bhagavatam, he engaged in Krishna consciousness, pure Krishna consciousness. And there's so many places like that all over America. Srila Prabhupada went to so many different places. And then you go there and then you hear the history. And Prabhupada, he was in Sweden also. How long, was he there for just a week or? You remember? Yeah. I remember I was listening recently, I think it was the 50th anniversary. But all these devotees were talking about the yatra and things like that. And Prabhupada being there, and they had a whole slideshow and stuff. And it was just interesting. But all these different places all around the world, that Prabhupada went, or temples that were established, there's a whole transcendental history to it. And it's really amazing, actually. All these different, there's so many temples like that. And it's temples we don't even know about. There's that book about Prabhupada in South Africa. It's I'm anxious to read that book. But then there's all these, and there's so many different places that, Prabhupada went, or even our spiritual master or great devotees, that these places have spiritual significance or make some scars on us, just whatever, these music festivals, for instance, it's they're completely materialistic, mundane. But then you think about them, and you think that, Parameshwar Prabhu was going there for years, Vijay Prabhu was going there for years, distributing so many books and this and that, and then they tell all their experiences there, and then it's wow, But but of those places, without of course those places are heavy. But the devotees, they go there and they perform the devotional service. And then when we think of those places, we immediately think of them in connection book distribution. We don't just think about whatever, I don't know, Miley Cyrus is playing there or something like that, or or something like that. It's that's disconnect in the background. So but the point is that the devotees, especially those pure devotees and great acharyas, Krishna is personally within their hearts. So wherever they go, Krishna is there, and they purify those places. And Srila Prabhupada did that. He came to the West and purified it by his chanting, by his walking around, all those different things like that. He purified that by his book distribution. Still, even now, his Prabhupada's books are in different places and purifying them. They're time bombs. So let's see here. So the devotees are moving tirthas. And so anyways, to shed a little light on what Narottam Das Thakur is saying here. So he's saying to visit places of pilgrimage is another bewilderment of the mind, because devotional service to the Lord in any place is the last word in spiritual perfection. So I kind of like start summing up things here. Just the last points, I'll kind of touch on them quick. So I made the point that to go to places of pilgrimage, Krishna performed his pastimes, it's pure. We should do that, of course. But he's kind of making the point about in the highest, well, one in the highest aspects, and Prabhupada touching that a devotee, if he's engaged in devotional service, he doesn't want to leave his service and go to Vrindavan or thing like that, because it's let me make a couple of points before that. Well, anyways, because he understands that the pure devotee understands that I'm serving Vrindavan, or I'm serving my spiritual master by doing the seva outside. And if I go to Vrindavan, what am I going to do? It's like Prabhupada's spiritual master told him to preach in the West. How is he going to do that in Vrindavan? He could write books and ship them, but he understood he had to go to the West. That order was there. And so to serve the spiritual master, that's, and we'll kind of conclude with that, but that is the pure spiritual master who is following in disciplic succession. He's giving the instruction to preach Krishna consciousness. He's a Vrajavasi, so then you're serving Vrindavan directly under the Vrajavasis by doing that. We'll touch a little bit about that later, but Srila Prabhupada showed by his example when he was in Vrindavan that he made it a point to hear from his spiritual master instead of he would pass the opportunity to go to some certain temple. And most of the devotees went. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur made a note of that this person likes to hear. He didn't go, to this temple. Everybody went. He stayed to hear. And so Prabhupada also, there's that famous thing of, and so we follow that principle. So preach now, samadhi later. And like I said, we can go to Vrindavan and we can go to these places, and that's there. Prabhupada gave spend 3 days in Vrindavan or 3 years. So the point was that you go to these places for inspiration, to get recharged, to come back and preach, to spread Krishna consciousness. Or if you're going to stay in Vrindavan, then you should do some serious service to Vrindavan, some really intense surrender. Not just going to Vrindavan and then, wandering around in Louis Bazaar or trying to find Krishna in some bush or something like that. Is Krishna in this bush or whatever? That's, that is child play. that is in the highest rung. Well, I don't know. You can be looking for Krishna everywhere, but if we're not on that level, it's kind of laughable. So Vrindavan is for inspiration, but our real work is all over the world. Prabhupada said like that. And because, as Narottam Das Thakur is making the point, that if we just thinking that the goal of life is to go on pilgrimage and visit, then we can get bewildered, because then we may think that I can only be Krishna conscious in Mayapur or in Vrindavan, nowhere else. And we sometimes see that devotees may go and spend time in the Dham, and then they come back to America, and it's they can't function within society anymore. And anyways, that's not good. Or we may, what's it called? I was going to say something, but it just slipped my mind. But, or we may have the misconception that we think that we have to be in the Dham and only chanting or things like that. But the thing is, going back to the original point, is that, the order of the Guru is actually topmost, of the spiritual master. And that takes precedence over being in a dham or being in a temple or whatever it is, whatever the spiritual master is instructing, that's what we have to follow. And because that's coming in parampara. If the Guru is telling you, and that those are there, but if the Guru is saying, I want you to preach in North Korea, and you're thinking, should I be in Vrindavan or should I preach in North Korea? It's better go to North Korea, because the point is that that instruction's coming down from the Guru. And whatever the Guru is instructing, that is of the top most important, actually. And by following that instruction, you'll get much more mercy than just staying in Vrindavan and putting on a show of being spiritually advanced. It's the disciple is always eager to serve the spiritual master, whatever that situation is. And so the perfection of devotional service is to serve. It's to serve the spiritual master, to serve the devotees, and to engage in that way. And the point is that we need to enter into the mood or have the proper consciousness of understanding what it means to be Krishna consciousness, who is Krishna consciousness, and following in the footsteps of the spiritual master. So the last thing I'll read here, this is from Dushtamana. This is from Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. I'll just read the translation here real quick. And so this translation is Bhakti Vikas Maharaj's translation in his Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav. So the Vrajavasis are the wealth of preachers. They never aspire for material reputation, cherished only by the living dead. Vrajavasis are infused with life, hence they preach. Their glorification of Lord Krishna is beyond. The glorification of Lord Krishna is devoid of desire for fame. So the point here is that, So Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is making an elaborate point in this Dushtamana, and that's something to look at, and there's a lot of points there. I'm just going to touch on the essence, which is the point, is he's making the point that those who are Vrajavasis, so they're living in Vrindavan, they have this inspiration to preach Krishna consciousness and to spread Krishna consciousness. And so the wealth of those who are preaching Krishna consciousness are the Vrajavasis. So those who are fired up to preach and spread Krishna consciousness, the great acharyas, as we see, they're inspired to preach and spread Krishna consciousness. And so in those great devotees too, they don't have any aspiration for material reputation or things like that. They're not, and he's making that point in the beginning. The basis of this is that, the mind's thinking that you just sit in Vrindavan, just chant, and like that. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is making the point to teach us that, you're just going to chant, but why are you going to sit there and chant? Because you want other people to glorify you. And he kind of makes that point within this set of prayers. So the one who is actually, and he sums it up, the one who's actually qualified to sit and chant. But the point is that the real Vrajavasis, that they're just preaching and glorifying Krishna just because that they have that's who they are. They just love to talk about Krishna, and they're not anxious for desire of fame or anything like that. So with with being free from this ahankara and then this this false ego and this desire for fame, adoration, and distinction, they're fully qualified to to glorify Krishna, to speak and all these different things, and to chant unendingly. Of course, we have to follow in their footsteps and preach. But the point is that that these people who are actually residents of Vrindavan, like Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, like this, etc. They're residents of Vrindavan, and they're inspired to preach and spread Krishna consciousness. And so by following in their footsteps and preaching, the same result can be delivered onto us. And so Srila Prabhupada showed that and taught like that. So the point is that by preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness, it's not like we're barred from, the benefit of being in Vrindavan. All that mercy can come and much more by executing the Sankirtan mission and by preaching and spreading Krishna consciousness. But the thing is that we have to be hearing from the right source, and it's important to note that, because there's another inverse of that, which is that you have to go to Vrindavan, you have to preach, and then we just get sidetracked from pure devotional service. So that instruction comes in parampara, it comes from the spiritual master. But anyways, all these conclusions are there in Shastra. And so that's a couple of things I had to say there. I don't know if there's any questions or comments about anything.
Hare Krishna. Okay. You're making a point about how Krishna's body is completely transcendental, and people deride his form, and they find they concoct so many reasons, why, for instance, this happened to Krishna, and for instance, getting hit with the arrow, and you're saying well, killed, Bali as Ram, so he had to reincarnate this, all these like concoctions. But the Acharyas in 11th Canto, there's like a few nice points that are really like convincing. Like for instance, the first thing is because his body's transcendental, the arrow actually didn't, it like touched his lotus feet, but it actually entered.
Yeah.
And one reason why is Jara would immediately would have tried to remove the arrow
Yeah.
from his foot, but he didn't. He just sort of placed his head on his lotus foot. But another thing is like why would that point about why would a hunter be on the aftermath of a battlefield of like 560 million dead warriors?
Yeah. Looking for a deer.
Where would there be a deer in that? The deer would like be nowhere around that. Like how deer are.
Yeah.
They don't like to be around anything like remotely crazy. What to speak of an entire battle, and then like just for them to come and like think that the Lord's foot is a deer after an entire battle, and how the hunter wasn't like scared of like the battle, and it's just so preposterous. But you have to be completely bewildered by Krishna's illusory energy to even like believe that these are viable reasons, that Krishna's material and all these different things, So that was just a really nice point I read in 11th Canto. But also another thing is just like another reason why the whole thing transpired at Prabhas and how the Yadu dynasty killed were brought to the respective abodes or whatever also is because Lord Krishna didn't want people who were coming from that lineage to be very much puffed up, by their lineage. This was like another point, and so this was like another reason why he withdrew his entire dynasty.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things to like learn and why he did that and stuff. So, thanks for sharing that. Somebody online?
Basically, they're asking why does God give you tests?
Why does God give tests? Well, Krishna gives tests to help us to show us where we're at in Krishna consciousness, and also to help us come further. The tests in and of themselves aren't like, it's not like a blockage or anything like that. But in practicing Krishna consciousness and in life, it's there to help us see where we're at, but also to help us come closer to Krishna. And we see that in Shastra also, that a test may be given, and a devotee may, overcome whatever his obstacle was or hang-up was, and surrender more to Krishna. And then that also may be there and shown for to encourage others that they can, whatever situation is, one can overcome that. But tests are there and obstacles are there. And also, too, another thing is that Krishna consciousness is it's the greatest gift and greatest treasure one can obtain, and if it's the greatest thing, then there has to be some I don't want to say checks and balances, but whoever's going to get it has to be seen that person actually wants it, because Krishna gives himself. So, all right. Anything else from Mataji's? Okay. Oh, you had something, Rishi?
Sorry. Might sound like a stupid question, but what if like someone's spiritual master gives an instruction, but then the person is like pretty sure that they can't do that, they can't actually fulfill that instruction at that time?
Yeah. Well, if they can't fulfill it at that time, then, like we see with Srila Prabhupada, he was given an instruction by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur to go preach in the West, and he teaches us that he was saying, well, I'm a family man, this and that, I have so many responsibilities, I can't do that now. But he never forgot that instruction. So then he says, better late than never. So if the spiritual master gives an instruction, and we can't immediately fulfill it now, then we can try to fulfill it in the future. And if it's something that we absolutely, and if it's something that's really difficult, we should try to do it and try our best. And then if we just can't do it, then the spiritual master will be pleased by our endeavor if we sincerely tried. But There's like that, and then there can be some conversation. But we should always try and endeavor in that way, because even endeavoring in that way is successful in and of itself. And Krishna will help, and we may be surprised by what transpires. Yes, you had something.
And you also told us example when you're thinking you're in 3, the level on 3,
Yeah,
but you are thinking like you're in 9.
yeah,
And same situation is there. When Guru gave you some instructions, you are thinking, I'm not ready.
yeah.
And he told that just take this apple. Oh, I am not ready to take this apple. You're in an illusion. You're mad.
Yeah.
And what is the problem? Table is there, apple is there, just take this apple and this
Yeah.
it. No, it's not possible. No. Some people also like this, no. Some mad people and crazy people, they have some misconception and they thinking this is not possible. But because it is your misunderstanding, and Guru can see this, what is you are ready or not, and he can empower, because he already is representative of God, and he can empower you because he is a representative, even if you're not ready in that moment.
Yeah. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki.